just wrap up chapter for the Odyssey. Before I started, I prepared for you two very nice videos that will help you um, to understand more. Here are they.
The Odyssey will be in our midterms test.
No, yeah, we will see. We will see. Let's not talk about the term test. We don't. You know what, Layan? What Corona helped me. What is a good side of Corona? I never think of next month. I never think of next week. Yani even next week, I cannot plan it. I cannot plan for it. This little virus destroyed all of our plans. Wallahi, all of our plans. Yani, yeah, there were, of course, all of us. There were times that we couldn't plan for tomorrow because tomorrow we will be locked down. Tomorrow we will be home for a week. So this wallahi, it helped. Yani, it really make me understand this very well. Yani, I know that we cannot plan for tomorrow, but this helped me to understand it very well. We don't know what will happen next week. Yani, a week before, we thought that the term exam will be at school. Yesterday, they said no. So everything is like. So don't think of it.
Aslan,
Okay?
teacher, they're planning for another lockdown.
Don't say that.
Yesterday
Really?
they posted, yes.
They will do. They will really do
Yeah,
that,
because
or they are just threatening us to.
I don't know, because one of my father's uncle, he is in travel agency, and he told that the flights will also be closed because the corona cases are increasing.
Oh, what such bad news. Leave it for Allah. Yeah, leave it for Allah. I just wanted to see my mother. That's it. I want to see my mother. Of course, all your mothers want to see their mothers. You are already sitting with your mothers, but we want to see our mothers. Okay, so I will play the first video and we share it.
Which page, miss?
And I will show you videos now. I just want to share it with you. Do you see the YouTube?
Yes, miss.
Yes.
In the previous section, Odysseus told the story of his travels and his imprisonment on Calypso's island. After hearing Odysseus's tale, King Alcinous urges everyone to give him gifts and arranges for a
No, I don't want to start with this one. I want to start with another one. This is this. I will share it.
In the previous section, Odysseus told the story of his travels and his imprisonment on Calypso's island. After hearing Odysseus's tale, King Alcinous urges everyone to give him gifts and arranges for a ship to take. In the previous section,
I don't know what happened. I prepared the two videos, but only when I open them, it opens one for only for me. So wait a minute. I will. I prepared the videos yesterday, but when I played them, the 2 videos are just one video. So there is a very important one I want you to know. So, girls, do you see the TED AD?
Yes.
Okay. You hear it? You hear it, girls?
No.
Girls, do you hear?
No,
No, miss.
No, miss.
Miss, we can hear, but you're pausing it.
A close encounter with a man-eating giant, a sorceress who turns men into pigs, a long-lost king taking back his throne. On their own, any of these make great stories, but each is just one episode in the Odyssey, a 12,000-line poem spanning years of ancient Greek history, myth, and legend. How do we make sense of such a massive text that comes from and tells of a world so far away? The fact that we can read the Odyssey at all is pretty incredible, as it was composed before the Greek alphabet appeared in the 8th century BCE. It was made for listeners rather than readers, and was performed by oral poets called rhapsodes. Tradition identifies its author as a blind man named Homer, but no one definitively knows whether he was real or legendary. The earliest mentions of him occur centuries after his era, and the poems attributed to him seem to have been changed and rearranged many times by multiple authors before finally being written down in their current form. In fact, the word rhapsode means stitching together, as these poets combined existing stories, jokes, myths, and songs into a single narrative. To recite these massive epics live, rhapsodes employed a steady meter, along with mnemonic devices like repetition of memorized passages or set pieces. These included descriptions of scenery and lists of characters, and helped the rhapsode keep their place in the narrative, just as the chorus or bridge of a song helps us to remember the next verses. Because most of the tales were familiar to the audience, it was common to hear the sections of the poem out of order. At some point, the order became set in stone, and the story was locked into place as the one we read today. But since the world has changed a bit in the last several thousand years, it helps to have some background before jumping in. The Odyssey itself is a sequel to Homer's other famous epic, the Iliad, which tells the story of the Trojan War. If there's one major theme uniting both poems, it's this: do not, under any circumstances, incur the wrath of the gods. The Greek pantheon is a dangerous mix of divine power and human insecurity, prone to jealousy and grudges of epic proportions. And many of the problems faced by humans in the poems are caused by their hubris, or excessive pride in believing themselves superior to the gods. The desire to please the gods was so great that the ancient Greeks traditionally welcomed all strangers into their homes with generosity, for fear that the strangers might be gods in disguise. This ancient code of hospitality was called xenia. It involved hosts providing their guests with safety, food, and comfort.
Girls, hello?
Yes,
Girls,
miss.
do you
Yes.
remember when I told you about that they feared, they were afraid of not being hospitable to the guests
God.
because they were afraid that they maybe got disguised in beggar's cloth,
Yes.
and this is called xenia.
Yes.
Okay, here is it, girls. They talk about it.
Xenia. It involved hosts providing their guests with safety, food, and comfort, and the guests returning the favor with courtesy and gifts if they had them. Xenia has a significant role in the Odyssey, where Odysseus in his wanderings is the perpetual guest, while in his absence, his clever wife Penelope plays nonstop host. The Odyssey recounts all of Odysseus's years of travel, but the narrative begins in medias res, in the middle of things. 10 years after the Trojan War, we find our hero trapped on an island, still far from his native Ithaca and the family he hasn't seen for 20 years. Because he's angered the sea god Poseidon by blinding his son, a Cyclops, Odysseus's passage home has been fraught with mishap after mishap. With trouble brewing at home and gods discussing his fate, Odysseus begins the account of those missing years to his hosts. One of the most fascinating things about the Odyssey is the gap between how little we know about its time period and the wealth of detail the text itself contains. Historians, linguists, and archaeologists have spent centuries searching for the ruins of Troy and identifying which islands Odysseus visited. Just like its hero, the 24-book epic has made its own long journey through centuries of myth and history to tell us its incredible story today.
This is, girls, why the Odyssey and the Iliad are so epic, are so important in the history of literature. We don't know anything about the period time, we don't know the time about details about the time of the Odyssey and the Iliad have been written, but we get to know all the information, all the details from these two poems. Okay, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Odyssey is like 1,500 lines. Okay, so this is the greatness of Homer, the one who wrote it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so now are you following with me?
Yes, miss.
Okay, we see the second video. Watch the second video.
Miss, can you go to the bathroom quickly?
Yes, till I prepare the video.
It fresh and hydrated with Simple.
In the previous section, Odysseus told the story of his travels and his imprisonment on Calypso's island. After hearing Odysseus's tale, King Alcinous urges everyone to give him gifts and arranges for a ship to take him home. They sail out, and before reaching Ithaca, Odysseus falls asleep. The sailors unload Odysseus on the shore and sail away, leaving Odysseus to wake up alone. At first, he doesn't recognize Ithaca, and he worries he's been tricked again. Athena,
Miss?
in the form of a young shepherd
Yes?
boy.
Miss, wait for Sarah to come back.
Okay, okay, till Sarah come back, girls, prepare your book. Open page 36. Open page 36, girls.
Okay, miss.
These were homeworks, huh? So today we will solve the homeworks that we took.
Miss, they were homeworks, but you didn't ask us to send them to you, right?
Yes, because we solved them at the second class, like today.
Okay.
Miss, I'm back.
Yes, welcome, Sarah. So here, girls, we just watch, start.
In the previous section, Odysseus told the story of his travels and his imprisonment on Calypso's island. After hearing Odysseus's tale, King Alcinous urges everyone to give him gifts and arranges for a ship to take him home. They sail out, and before reaching Ithaca, Odysseus falls asleep. The sailors unload Odysseus on the shore and sail away, leaving Odysseus to wake up alone. At first, he doesn't recognize Ithaca, and he worries he's been tricked again. Athena appears in the form of a young shepherd boy and tells Odysseus where he is. He gets emotional knowing he's finally home, but he chokes back his emotion. He doesn't recognize Athena, so he hides his identity and tells this elaborate lie about how he killed a guy and now he's a fugitive. Athena reveals her true form. She says she helped him to get home, and now she's going to help him with his new trial, killing the suitors. She transforms Odysseus so no one will recognize him, and tells him to go find one of his servants, the swineherd, while she goes to Sparta to call Telemachus home and warn him about the ambush the suitors have planned. Odysseus goes to the hut of the swineherd, Eumaeus. Eumaeus doesn't recognize him, and as they talk, he says over and over how much he misses his master. But Odysseus doesn't reveal his identity. Instead, he tells another elaborate lie, making up a whole life story that ends with him being enslaved by sailors. Meanwhile, Athena goes to Sparta and finds Telemachus. She tells him to go back to Ithaca at once. She warns him about the ambush of his ship the suitors are planning, and how to get around it. When he arrives home, he should go straight to the swineherd's place, and spend the night there. When Telemachus reaches Ithaca, he goes to see Eumaeus, and he sees Odysseus there, still disguised as a beggar. Telemachus asks Eumaeus to go to his mother, and let her know that he's alright. Eumaeus leaves, and Athena removes Odysseus' disguise. Telemachus doesn't know who he is at first, since he was just an infant when Odysseus left for Troy 20 years ago. Initially, he doesn't believe Odysseus when Odysseus reveals his identity, but Odysseus convinces him, and they have a happy, tearful reunion. Telemachus provides Odysseus with some details about the suitors. He counts 108 of them, plus servants, and father and son plot their revenge. That night, the suitors gather in Odysseus' palace for dinner. They saw Telemachus earlier when he went home to see his mother, and they realized he'd made it past the ambush. Now Telemachus is there, and Odysseus, still in disguise, and Eumaeus both show up. Odysseus goes around to the suitors begging for scraps, and he gets into an argument with one named Antinous, who gets angry and throws a chair at him. Odysseus gets into a few...
So girls, are you following? This when he asked for bread and he threw a chair on him.
Yes.
So you're following?
Yes.
Few more confrontations before the night is over. Once the suitors have gone home for the night, Odysseus tells Telemachus to lock up their weapons and armor, which they always leave at Odysseus' palace. That way, when he takes his revenge, they'll be defenseless. Penelope comes down to speak to the stranger, in hopes that he has some news about Odysseus. He makes up a story about meeting Odysseus when Odysseus stopped at his house on the way to Troy. He says he saw Odysseus not long ago, and he knows Odysseus is on his way home. The next day, the suitors gather for another feast in Odysseus' palace. While they're eating and drinking, Penelope announces that she's finally going to choose a man to marry, and she proposes a contest to determine who it'll be. Each of the suitors must string Odysseus' bow and shoot an arrow through 12 lined-up axes. The man that can do it will be her husband. A few of the suitors try to string the bow, which involves flexing it into the proper shape and then getting the string in place to hold it taut, but none of them are strong enough to do it. Odysseus asks for a turn. The suitors object at first, but they finally give in. Odysseus strings the bow with ease, and he fires an arrow straight through all 12 axe handles. Without warning, Odysseus leaps up and shoots the suitor Antinous through the throat. Then he reveals to the suitors who he is. Chaos erupts through the hall as Odysseus picks them off one by one. Odysseus tells Telemachus, the swineherd Eumaeus, and a cowherd who is nice to him, to run to the storeroom and bring back armor and weapons. The men return with the equipment, but one of the suitors sneaks out through a smoke duct in the wall and brings back equipment for the suitors. A huge melee breaks out, and Odysseus, Telemachus, Eumaeus, and the cowherd fight until they've slaughtered all the suitors. When all the suitors are dead, Odysseus has Eurycleia round up the disloyal servant women who are sleeping with the suitors. He makes them clean the hall, and when they're done, Telemachus and the two herdsmen march them outside and kill them. Eurycleia tells Penelope that Odysseus has returned, and Penelope goes downstairs and finds Odysseus in the great hall. She doesn't believe it's him at first. He looks like her husband, but it's been 20 years since she last saw him. She tests him by asking Eurycleia to bring the bed out of their bedroom in front of him. Odysseus speaks up immediately, saying it's impossible to move the bed. He carved it himself from a large olive tree that grew out of the floor, and he built the walls of the bedroom around it. Penelope is convinced, She runs to Odysseus and embraces him. She says she worried that some impostor had come claiming to be her husband, but now he's home at last. Odysseus says he has to sail out once more, to plant an oar far inland, in order to appease Poseidon. But once that's done, they'll have peace. They go to bed, and Odysseus tells her everything he's been through. The next morning, Odysseus goes to see his father, Laertes. Laertes doesn't recognize Odysseus at first, and Odysseus makes up another story, calling himself Man of Strife, from Romer Town. But eventually, he reveals who he is, and he and his father hug and cry. They go inside and sit down to a feast with Telemachus and the herdsmen, as well as some friends of Laertes. The families of the suitors have found out about the slaughter at Odysseus's palace, and they formed a mob to get revenge on Odysseus. They show up at Laertes' farm and threaten Odysseus and the others. Athena shows up in the form of Mentor, and Laertes spears the leader of the mob through the head. All hell is about to break loose, but Athena stops everyone and commands them to be civil. The families leave, and Odysseus feels he has peace at last. For more information about the Odyssey, check out the Odyssey SparkNote at www.sparknotes.com.
Spark Notes, girls, is very useful for any kind of book you want to see a summary for. For any summary of any literature work, you can use Spark Notes. Spark Notes is great. It summarizes all the stories. Okay?
Okay.
Yes. So, girls, before we move on, do you have any question about the Odyssey?
No.
Mm.
No.
Okay. When we take a quiz, girls, I will test you in the book and in the PowerPoint. For next week, the test will be on chapter 3. What we take in chapter 3, Kasib and the Caliph? What do we study, teacher, for Kasib and Caliph in chapter 3, right or not? Here?
Yes.
Or this? Yes, here. It was the travelers of Ibn Battuta when he told us the story about Caliph and Kasib and the Caliph. And then he told us the comparing story of the Arabian Nights, tales from 1001 Night. We take first read, second read, and third read. Yani we don't only study the passage, no, we study the passage, the first read, second read, third read, and the PowerPoint. PowerPoint is very important. Which PowerPoint, teacher? The 3 PowerPoints I make for you, because I make one for first read, one for second read, one for third read. These are very important. The analysis that we analyze together, these boxes that we fill, these are important. Okay?
Okay.
Miss, the information in the PowerPoint, is it found in the book?
No, not.
Okay.
Not in details. You have, as I told you before, the preview academic vocabulary, they are written in a blue box for you. I make a whole presentation for it.
Yes, Miss.
Okay. Okay. So now we want to solve the assessments, the connect to testing of the chapter. We solve only for chapter 1. So open with me page 36 for the assessment.
Yes. So we have 2 stories, Cabbage and Battuta and the Arabian Nights.
Not 2 stories, it's 1 chapter, but it has 2 excerpts, yes.
Okay.
Okay, 36. Did you solve it, girls, or not? It was homework.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, Rima?
Yes.
Yes, Rima. First question, yeah, Rima.
What page?
36. Rima, you didn't solve it?
No.
Okay. Lujain?
Yes, Miss. Miss, this one, I'm confused between 2 choices. Between A and D.
A says what they had. Okay, the question says what, Yellow Jane?
Which one best supports the conclusion that the author doubts the stories told by Marco Polo?
Yes.
I think
Say,
it's D, miss.
Say what do you think and why? A or D? Why? A says it means that you have totally eliminated B and C.
Yes, I don't think.
Yes. So let's look at A and D.
Miss, I think it's D, because he said that his friends still didn't believe him about the way he traveled Marco Polo.
Look,
he wanted to show that he didn't believe.
On a test, you may be asked to identify how supporting details support the main idea of a text, of a paragraph, because the main idea was that people didn't believe Marco Polo's stories, but he insisted. So, which of the following quotation from the passage best support the conclusion that the author doubts that the stories told by Marco Polo are true? On his deathbed, his friends pleaded with him for the salvation of his soul to retract the obviously dishonest statement that he had made in his book, but he answered stoutly, I have not told half of what I saw. This support that the author doesn't believe him, or they had sailed many dangerous seas, scaled high mountains and plateaus, crossed banded redden deserts and paths. He told with no charm of a simple and straightforward style how he father had left Acre when Mark was about 17, Perking, or as it was then called, impressed Polo even more than Hanko, his million failed. So girls, who else? Lujane says it's A or D, but she prefers D better. Who can answer me?
Can I?
Okay, Sarah?
Layan.
Layan.
Yes.
You and Sarah have the same voice, by the way. That's
really?
why I always say for you, Sarah, yeah.
Miss, I chose A.
Yes, why?
Because he said that they said, like they said, but it's, and he said that it was exaggerated. Like he wrote the descriptions and then they seem exaggerated, and then he said they said that, you know.
Yes. Lujain, look under the question. There is a blue box, right?
Yes.
Read it, Lujain.
A central idea of the passage is that many people in Polo's time doubted the author of his stories, but the question asks you to look for evidence that the author himself doubted Polo's accounts. Choices B and C touch on respectively the book Polo wrote and how much the sights he saw astounded him, but they do not get at Durant's opinion and hence are not the right answer. Choice D looks tempting because it mentions Polo's obviously dishonest statements, but is a view held by his friends, so it's not a good answer.
Yes,
Choice A is the good
it's a view
answer.
held by his friends, not by the author. So here he told you how he chose the choice A. So the answer was written in your book.
I didn't see it.
Me too, I didn't see it.
Yes. Okay, so choice A is the correct answer. Okay, question 2, Dana Wael. Question 2, Malak Wasim.
Yes, miss.
Yes, Malak.
My answer is B.
Why? You have to tell me.
Because it said that it provided
read the
some
question
examples.
first, dear. Read the question itself.
How are the details about Polo's name Marco Millions important to the development of a central theme in the passage? Because it provides an example that he was not believed by the people.
Yes. They didn't believe him, so they give him this nickname of Mark Millions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We take Najwa. Najwa, answer 3, Najwa.
Miss, what is 2?
2 is B. Ragad, where are you, Ragad?
Miss, should we go to the next period?
Okay. So we stop here. Najwa, you will answer question 3 after we come back. I'll meet you in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.